Hello world, Great Giza Pyramid. A lot of people think it was a big pile of rock in the middle of the desert. Well, as long as you think that, you'll never appreciate exactly what this structure does and can do. Also what it shows us. First off, let's just look at the outside of the structure. Did I tell you there's a missing pyramidion? I tell you, if you look at the top of that structure and you take into account the size of the structure, that is 38 feet by 38 feet up there, 38 feet squared. If there was a missing pyramidion there, it would be like the size of like a dump truck, a huge dump truck. But what they like to show you in museums and stuff is something about the size of 5 feet by 6 feet, and talking about its like proportions and sit in awe of it and stuff, you know, phi and pi and la la la. But I'm here to tell you there was never a top. So we're not going to model it with a top, because there wasn't a top. In fact, the more and more you look at it, if you really pay attention and look at photos of the top, you see that there's actually a design and a pattern to the area on the top of the structure. And there was no missing pyramidion in there. You can even see the well and how that area actually cuts through some of the rocks. So it was molded that way. Molded, cast, sculptured, whatever you want to look at. No missing pyramidion. Let's also take into account the surface of the structure. Two groups of people that I know of so far have taken the time to measure the elevation and the deviation of each one of the steps. And you're welcome to go to surface.greatgizapyramid.com or surface.giza.ws, and you can look at this for yourself. And there will be another link eventually to the gentleman that just recently did it. He's going to put his findings digitally online. He also did a 3D model of that, which is also great to look at. And he did a 3D model of the void, which is about 1/3 of the way down this structure on the corner. That comes into way more function when we discuss how this functions in congruency with the other structures on the plateau. But let's just focus on the pyramid here. Those waves are such. Now there's one of them at the halfway mark, which is larger than the rest. And there's one of them, the 35th level, is the largest of the ones we're going to discuss. And about a sixth of the way higher than that is another one. Now, this one correlates to the change in elevation on the third of the largest structures, because the same way this has a wave, the third of the structures just has larger at the bottom, and then it's a constant set for the rest of the way up. It is the ground, the neutral to the system, where this is the collector of electrons. And the one next to it, might as well point out, the one that has the smooth section at the top, and then it has this little ground, and then it has smaller steps to larger steps to larger steps to larger steps to larger steps. This one is shorting with, grounding to the ambient static electricity at the higher elevation. This one is actually pulling the static electricity from the lower elevation and kind of coaxing it up. And this one is maintaining the average mean static electricity. So you have your positive, actually your negative, your positive, and your ground. So that is the outside system. Now what they do is they pipe some water through the channels that are underneath the structure. They go from east to west across the structure, and this would pull a different, well, let's put ground level in here. We need ground level. Ground level, you got your grotto. Your grotto is one of the two places within the structure that touches earth. Normal, everyday terra firma. Now this is designed in such a way that there is a room on top of a room, so that the water cannot go past a certain elevation and air pressure cannot push the water below a certain elevation. So it's like a water lock, a water gas lock. Now I say gas because this is actually going to be our cathode for the system. This is going to off vent hydrogen, which will be piped out the holes in the southern wall. It's actually come out of this conduit because of the way it's drawn. It comes out. Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's just draw from here. It comes out the southern conduit where they have holes for hiding the scrolls for the king. That was their excuse for them. So they exist. They didn't know what they were there for. And they get piped up to the top of the king's chamber into the relieving chamber where they find the seeds and the shells and the dust that they can't account for, which I'll tell you now were carried up with the updraft with the hydrogen into the system. Let you know it had a pretty decent flow at one point. Once they bring it up to the top of the king's chamber, the immense rocks up there help with the buoyancy of the gas, and they pump the gas, well, they don't pump, the pressure pumps it or pushes it down through the bottom below the floor line of the king's chamber, where there is a pit in the back, would be west north corner. Today it's covered by a chunk of metal. You can walk over there and step on it. It is metal designed to look like rock, out of place, out of mind. But you can, has finger holes, you can stick your fingers in there, you can shove a flashlight through there. There are pictures at photos.GreatGizaPyramid.com where you can look at pictures inside of it. I have pictures from the 90s and I have pictures from the 1800s of what it looked like then and current day. People will notice inside of there is a brick wall. That brick wall had me scratching my head for a very, very long time until the one 18-year-old kid climbed the surface of the structure with his little GoPro, and you'll notice that scattered throughout the surface of the structure, at least on the side he climbed up, are patches of brick. I'm not sure if they're end-of-file markers or if they help coax the static electricity around in certain ways, or they needed certain stop gaps. Haven't really gotten that deep into the pyramid phrenology, and until somebody takes one of those bigapixel cameras and takes a picture, you know, where they pan back and forth taking pictures, and I get some really nice photos and I can actually look at it, or I get some nice 3D scans plus photos because I'd like to compare them. I'm still working on that, but the overall structure would push static electricity, will today, current day, will push static electricity and maintain it onto the structure. That's the reason we have the nice antenna on the top, to alleviate that wonderful buildup. Let's get back to the story. Hydrogen comes in through the pool of water, which would be that hole in the ground, acts as a back flash arrestor, so that the reaction within the king's chamber does not flash back to the source of the hydrogen, or the hydrogen stored pooled hydrogen. This in the room will create basically water vapor, steam, all the above. Now technically this is down about 1/4 of the way up the structure, this section, but I'm drawing it here because I want some room to work with scale. The king's chamber is designed as so, with a hallway off of it. Let's just start with that. Off of the one side, at the elevation, same elevation as the entrance to the room, there is an outlet. This is the source of the oxygen into the room. It is shaped like so, where I'm going to put a dotted line here. This is the break in the rock. It's an elevation marker that is consistent throughout this particular level, and we'll refer back to it. Call it the King's Level elevation marker. Inside here, when staring into it, it is kind of shaped like so. This will allow, because this is also going to be the water marker, as the water in this section elevates, it's going to cut off its oxygen supply. As it lowers, it's going to give more oxygen supply. So this is a self-maintaining system as far as the burn rate of the system. On the opposite side is another conduit at the same elevation. So it is right here. It goes into the structure to the next room over, they like to call the antechamber, the pre-chamber, like antipasta. About a third of the way into this second room, it starts to bend and go up. Now, I'm making it a drastic go up because it's actually a pretty deep room. But as it bends up, it also bends away. So now we're looking down upon the room. And this is going to be the Grand Gallery. We'll make this the ante-room. And the one conduit comes out from here and bends to the side. At the same time it bends up, it bends to the side. So it's kind of like making an S shape. Quite unique. What they don't like to tell you about is the tunnel that comes out from here. It's called the Thieves' Tunnel. It's located right about there. Sometimes they have a gate in front of it, sometimes they have a fence in front of it. Doesn't matter, it exists. What also exists is if you climb all the way down into there about 10 feet, there's a conduit across the top of it that is squared just like this one. However, it's at an elevation just above that marker. And it's actually in the wall located about there. It has a conduit that goes straight up and joins this conduit. That was confirmed by putting a 2 million candle watt candle power flashlight and being able to see the light through the shaft. So it is a connecting conduit. This then comes up to and goes to, but does not breach the surface of the structure. Goes up to, but does not breach the surface of the structure. What this will do is we're going to retrofit a wall into here. Now I'm going to complicate this later because we did damage when we came through this room. But for right now, we're just keeping it simple. We're going to retrofit a wall back into there, which will allow this water to pool, which allows it to have its cutoff and its play and its the way it was engineered to do. What it'll also do is allow steam to come up this conduit, up into the area of high static electricity. It will condensate and it will start to run back down. The higher the volume this occurs, it's going to be like a conduit, a water conduit, coming down into the system. Also, the ambient steam in the area will also pick up, and because nature abhors a vacuum, static electricity will work its way down into the system. Down into the system, falling down into here, into that pit, running across, and now we're going to go down the Grand Gallery. Okay, so let's retrofit those areas in here, the antechamber, and we're now looking at the Grand Gallery. Grand Gallery goes all the way down and actually goes below the 35th level. Now, Grand Gallery has a unique shape too. Grand Gallery has walls that are shaped like that. This, as it runs down, same scenario. So it's coming down at a fairly steep angle. It's got ridges running down the entire side, except for way down at the bottom 11.5 feet. These ribs come down, and the bottom 11.5 feet is nice and straight, and then you've got your pit area. And if I did this properly, these sides would come up. I think there's like 7 steps, so I didn't put all 7. You can obviously see. And this bottom area, about 11.5 feet, is nice and smooth walls. Along the edge, there are water holes, water pools. I think there are 26 of them or something like that down the whole length of the way. What this will do is it will allow the static electricity a place to pocket. And as the static electricity is running down the center of the channel, it's always going to be trying to, because nature abhors a vacuum, release its energy to an area of less static electricity area. And because of the way that it's shaped, at 90-degree angles, static electricity is kind of quarantined within this center area without the ability to release its energy outside of the area, and constantly being bombarded by raindrops. So anytime any ambient energy releases, it gets caught by a raindrop and comes back down. So the system is designed to push the energy down through the system. Now, up in here in the boss mark, when you really get to it, it's shaped like so. It's a little bit drastic on my part, but you get the idea. It's kind of more like so. You also notice that there seems to be an area that something was up against the back of it. I believe that was some sort of a trough that would hold the water and allow it to drip over the edge. That water dripping over this edge and coming down, compounded by the water dripping down through here into the system, would act like a Lord Kelvin drip generator, because each of them are falling into an area where the area they're falling into is the opposite potential of the area they're coming from. The way it's engineered, it will create a spark occasionally right at the boss mark. This will ignite the gases in the immediate area and blow a little blast furnace out there, like a little puff of smoke, puff of energy from time to time. This accounts for the scarring on the top of the structure right up there, and would help to move all the static electricity, more to the point the ambient water moisture, down into the system. Give it a little nudge. When it gets down to the lower area, it's met by a pool of water. A pool of water that seems to ground to natural water, or I should say light water. And it has a long hallway and a pool on the inside. What this is going to do is all this moisture, which is condensating, is also going to start condensating within the Queen's chamber. And when it condensates within the Queen's chamber, it's going to lose more and more surface space. As it loses more and more surface space, it can't hold the static electricity. As it can't hold the static electricity, eventually the room itself is going to reach its saturation point. And that is why we found an arc, an electrical arc, in the south wall, which we drilled through to find the conduit behind it. That conduit would lead out of the structure and is used at some other point, and or what we're looking for is a reaction that recurs within the room that then complements the structure next door. I'm still honestly working on what nature will do at this point. But the way the room is designed, the niche is slightly off center towards the south, and the one south conduit, the one with the crack, is 5 or 6 inches closer to the east, so that when you look into the niche, you'll notice it's smooth across the back wall, except for one area where there looks to be like claw marks. That would allow a driplet of water running down, getting caught into there, and then dripping to be slightly closer to center. And when it drips, if it falls into the glory hole, which is earmarked by the niche as you look deep inside of it and how it's shaped, if it gets to that glory hole, statistically, it will wind up jumping to the southern corridor. And being that there's very few other areas for driplets to be falling, because anything that hits the side will run down the wall into the water, down the wall into the water. This is the only place within the room where there's even the ability for a driplet to be dripping. Across the top of the niche, and in that one particular spot where it's engineered to be the perfect dead center of the niche, which is off center of the room. Hence, you're skewing the odds of where that spark of energy from that driplet of water is going to go. And that's what I have so far. There's a whole lot more to it as far as in the southern section. I really didn't get into how this is the hydrogen. The oxygen itself comes out in the southern section, and it's doing some work as well. It's not completely being benign. Within the southern section, the shaft runs down and it flattens out, and then you've got your dead end shaft, your pre-subterranean chamber, and you've got your, this would be your anode actually, so this is your cathode. This is where your oxygen is going to be sourced from. Now the oxygen, when it fills this room, it's going to work its way out. When it works its way out, it's going to come across an area where the conduit is shaped like so. What that will do is cause the oxygen to pool, because there's actually a little tooth right there, will pool, and when it bubbles out, will cause a water hammer coming back in. That water hammer, you can see evidence of in photos from the 1800s, where there's about 4 piles of dirt coming through there. And in photos up to the early 90s, where in here, there's piles of dirt at a much higher frequency. And I'm thinking what they were doing is somehow taking that water hammer and having it do work in here, because one thing they don't like to really point out about the dead end shaft is that it's ribbed like an inchworm. It's not smooth like the other shafts. And I think they're playing with either cavitation or mixing and churning of the waters. The other tidbits about this particular area is right in here. If we blow this up, the one side of it is lower than the other. There's also a second area there for a reaction to occur, and I think they were milking off extra hydrogen down here that's brought over into this room to have a higher hydrogen percentage than oxygen because of the way it's engineered. I think that's what this whole area is doing. I'm pretty sure they're probably playing with heavy water if they haven't found a secret of how to actually generate heavy water, something that we really don't generate. We just deplete light water of heavy water, and that's how we make it with electrolysis or boiling. These guys may have had an extra secret there as like how to actually manufacture it, but that's again what we'll have to do some experimentation. We set up the system the right way, follow the instructions, and see what we get out of it. I think we're going to get more than a spark. I think we're going to get some extra secrets that that history may not yet have recorded, and if they have, they're in the the Vatican library, and they're in the Rand Corporation's data banks, but they're not in general knowledge, which is quite annoying. Thank you.